Welcome, everybody, to the Rogue Deck Chronicle podcast. I'm Devin, and as you can see across from me, I don't have Dean with me because Dean is on a well deserved vacation with his family. So he gave me the reins. He allowed me to do a podcast, but he had one rule for me. He didn't want me to talk for an hour, and I get it. I talk to him all the time. He doesn't want me ever to just go off the rails. So he asked for me to bring someone that I trust and love. So I absolutely have done that. So I have invited a dear friend of mine. I call him the Pokemon Pocket God Pack King. He has pulled two God Packs in the 2.5 sets we've had so far. So let me introduce everyone to Vimmers. Vimmers, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone today?
Hello, my name is Vimmers. As you can tell, I'm unfortunately British. You have to put up with that for today. Thank you, Dean, for letting me be on the podcast. Hope you're having a safe trip. I'm mostly a pocket player. I don't play too much of the main TCG, but I do have a good understanding from the classic times, all the way back in base set. All the way, it was literally everyone trading for every one Charizard, which I don't think times have really changed that much.
Oh no, Pokemon still gives Charizard that treatment.
Oh, yeah. Charizard is like God tier. It's completely up there. It's
So
great to be on.
awesome. So for those who have watched the channel, you've heard me talk about Pocket. And initially, I was actually not a fan of Pocket. I was kind of resistant. I did not download the game day one. Vimmers and my wife are the people who actually talked me into downloading Pocket. I didn't download Pocket until probably about the third week of global launch. So by the
That's
time I started it, Vimmers and my wife were already getting packs like crazy. So I had to kind of catch up, and that's where I got Dean involved a little bit. So that is why I invited Vimmers, because he is the reason why I actually enjoyed my Pokemon Pocket experiences and why I just love playing the game. If it wasn't for him, Pokemon Pocket would have been another Pokemon mobile game that I don't play.
like
So,
Pokemon Sleep.
yeah, just like Pokemon Sleep or Pokemon Masters EX or any of those other games. So, I want to invite someone who really loves the game, has a very unique perspective compared to myself and my brother on how games are played, because before even coming on today, he's like, Dev, I am horrible at building decks. I have no
Oh,
idea what's happening. Can you sit down? I'm said, actually, we're doing a deck building series, so this will work perfectly. So,
I've been listening to all the deck building series, and it has helped me in some respects, despite the deck that I sent you the other day.
yes. Oh,
Which was pretty. They took one look at it. It was like, hmm, let's try something else.
it was like, let's look at your collection, which is something that Pocket is very different from TCG, where it's one of those you are bound by what you've pulled, because you just can't buy singles in Pocket. You can't go
No,
and buy cards in Pocket. You can't craft cards in Pocket. You have to rely on what you pull. Yes, actually you can craft cards, but it costs pack points, and that's hard to come by for some people.
yeah,
So
yeah.
when we actually talk about the deck of the week this week, it actually was with the limitations, lack thereof. I mean, he still has over 2,000 cards pulled from Vimmer's account. So we sat down and we looked through using what we're going to talk about in the How to Train a Rogue Decks piece today, and built a deck with the principles that we're going to talk about. So for today's video, in today's episode, we are going to talk about Triumphant Light, which is the new mini set that debuted in Pokemon Pocket on the 28th of February. We're going to talk
Mm.
about the final part of our How to Train a Rogue Deck building series around energy and energy manipulation and acceleration. And then we're going to talk about the deck of the week that Vimmers and I built using Pocket as our source. And for some of those who watch Pocket or play Pocket, you're going to see these characters be like, yeah, this makes sense. And then some of you guys are going to be like, why did you pick that type? Again, it's a type that we both thought was actually really good in terms of energy acceleration that can compete in the meta. And at one point was the meta, but has shifted with the launches of the packs and the evolutions and extensions and all that kind of stuff. So that being said, Vimmers, are you ready to talk about Triumphant Light?
I'm ready to talk about Triumphant Light because it is a fantastic mini set.
Yes, it is. I mean, it's an interesting mini set because
Yeah,
compared to Mythical Island, I don't think Triumphant Light has as many impactful cards that Mythical Island did when it got released of its mini set from its parent set.
no. I think the whole point of Triumphant Light was to introduce something completely different to Mythical Island. Mythical Island was more just an expansion of the original base set, with Triumphant Light, we got the Arceus EX and Arceus Link cards,
Hmm.
which kind of changes things up from the other mini set that we've got. I love this set's artwork as well, which is
Oh my
magnificent.
gosh, it is so beautiful. Even the
It
base
is so
arts,
good.
the base arts are beautiful. Let alone the alt arts and the full
Yeah.
arts and all that stuff. So 100% agree. I think generally Pocket has nailed it from an artistic piece.
I'm a sucker for good art on just about anything. And one of the things that pulled me in with Pocket was the art, seeing some of your base set designs coincide with the fantastic full arts we get. The story style arts are just brilliant. It's a feast for the eyes. It really is a feast for the eyes.
Oh, it is for sure. For those who do not know or play Pocket, I would encourage you to go at least go on Cerebi, Limitless, go on the different card resources, look at the Pocket cards, and just scroll through the sets and go to the bottom where all the alt arts and full arts are, and you would just fall in love with some of the artworks. I know last episode we talked about how beautiful some of the cards were, especially the new Wailord coming in Journeys Together. Pokemon Pocket makes those cards look basic. I really
It
do
does. It really
agree.
does.
The artwork is absolutely amazing, and for collectors, it's perfect. It's the game that makes you want to chase cards without having to spend money, and it's one of those things that can feed that collection addiction without hurting the wallet as much. So,
Oh yeah. I mean, the way it sets up, the way it runs, you don't have to spend money on it. You can get insanely lucky with pools.
yeah.
Like free story Arceus in the current set. But
Yeah, we couldn't build a
you're gonna
deck
get
because
something
he
all
had
the
too
time.
many Arceuses and didn't have the other cards in the set. So we're like, what are we doing here?
It was ridiculous. It was really bad. I
So
apologize for my luck sometimes.
like I said, he is he has pulled two god packs in this game. I've pulled zero. So some people are luckier than others and get to have the thrill of really good packs. But like Vimmers mentioned, this Triumphant Light set introduced RCS and RCS EX to the card game. It's another Sinnoh set. Pokemon, for the love of God, stop printing things from Gen 4. We've got way
Enough
too
Gen
much Gen
4.
4 in the last 3 and 4 years. As much as I love Legends Arceus, I love certain aspects of Gen 4, please, 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 please focus on another generation. Do not
It's
do
got to, it's
Kanto.
got
Do
to.
not do Sinnoh. Do someone else. Please.
Can we please get a Unova deck
Oh,
or a Alola deck?
please. I would love the next set, the one that's supposedly coming in April, to be based on
Yes.
Unova. That would be, I would love it. That would be
It'd be
perfect.
so good. It'd be so so good. But the way the Pocket decks have come out or the expansions have come out, it started with Genetic Apex, which was basically Cantonian,
Hmm.
and then Mythic Kind was an expansion on the Cantonian deck. Same's happened with Space Time Smackdown and Triumphant Light,
Yeah.
where it's all Gen 4 based. I'm with Dev. Gen 4, I love it, but we've overfeeding on it.
Yes.
Let's move on.
So the the mascot of this set is Arceus. So in this set, there
Mhm.
are two different Arceus cards: a baby Arceus and an Arceus EX. I'm not going to talk about baby Arceus as much because it hasn't really had any impact to the overall meta. But for Arceus EX, it definitely has, and it's become the kind of the centerpiece of a lot of decks that have entered the meta over the last 2.5 weeks. So for those who do not know, Arceus EX is a basic colorless Pokemon. It's 140 HP, which is pretty much up there with a lot of the other basic EXs in the Pokemon Pocket meta. And this card has two different aspects to it, or really three when you talk about the extension of the set in a second. So it has an ability, Fabled Luster. This Pokemon can't be affected by any status conditions, which is actually very important because status conditions were given more emphasis in the last two sets. In this 2 and 2A sets, we've been seeing a lot more burn, poison, and paralysis, and sleep.
Yeah.
So RC's being immune to all of that is actually really, really big for a lot of fringe meta decks in the Pocket meta. But what it's been giving it a lot more attention, it's its attack. Its attack is for 3 colorless energy, ultimate force, has 70 base damage, and then does 20 more for each of your bench Pokemon. So it can do 130 damage up front with a full bench, which is annoyingly high.
It
And
is.
with it being 3 colorless energy, it can go in pretty much any deck. And we're going to talk about the energy acceleration in a little bit on how other decks can plug that into their general engine and see if it works or not. And in some engines, it's still so good, you're going to plug it in even though if it doesn't work.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It's a fantastic card that can benefit from a lot of different things. Colorless is one of the best things it could possibly be. It's meant to be colorless anyway. With moving energy around, there's, I think only Dark type maybe doesn't have an energy mover, but everything can power Arceus, and Arceus will help out just about anything with Link.
absolutely. And then, like you said, there is these link abilities that has connected other cards to Arceus in more ways than one. If you ever pull the immersive art Arceus, you will see all these Pokemon in the animation, which is even a better tie-in to everything. So there are 8 Pokemon with the link ability in the set. I'm not going to go through all 8. All 8 have different abilities and kind of different impacts on each individual card. Some of them increase attack, some of them decrease attack received, some of them decrease retreat costs or in different aspects. But there are 2 link cards that have really made an impact in the general metagame. So first is Heatran. Heatran is a basic fire type for 110 HP, so again, on the bulkier end. And it has what's called the ability is Speed Link. So Speed Link says if you have an Arceus or an Arceus EX into play, this Pokemon has 0 retreat. The reason why that's important is because it has 3 retreat naturally.
Yeah, it's a hard one to get out there when you got it in there, but that 3 retreat, nullified completely, fantastic pull away.
And then, and it being a really good attacker generally anyway, for 2 fire energy, it has an attack, Raging Mad Strike, 40 base, and it has any damage on it, it does 40 more. So 2 energy, 80 damage is a great, efficient attacker in the game. And in fire, it has a really good energy accelerator anyway, which we'll talk about in a little bit in the How to Train a Deck series and kind of talk about energy manipulation a little bit. But this Heatran is, I would say, probably the second most impactful card. Yeah. Behind another one, which we'll talk about. I don't even think Arceus is the most impactful card, arguably. I think it allows for a lot of different tricks, but I don't think it's the most impactful card. I think there's another card here that hits a whole bunch of Pokemon for key weaknesses that are more impactful, in my opinion.
Okay. What would you say is the most one? Because I've looked at some of the others that are a bit weaker, like the Rotom's kind of weak in the link class, I think that's the best way to call it. I'm not seeing anything else. Heatran's really good. What would you say?
I think in terms of link cards, I think Crobat is better, and we'll talk about Crobat in a second. Yeah. And I think overall in the set, the most impactful card is Sudowoodo. Because of its 1 energy fighting type hit that can hit into a lot of Pokemon for weakness, and it can get boosted by Lucario. So that combination just does a lot of damage for really no effort. Very low to the ground attacker, which is why I think it's the most impactful. I don't think it's the best, but I think it's the most impactful.
I think it's also the one that might be most overlooked.
Yes, for sure. I think the fighting archetypes definitely don't get the love they need in this, and Sudowoodo is going to bring more attention as this meta evolves. So we did just talk about Crobat for a second. So Vimmers, why don't you go over what Crobat does? Okay, computer's not working, so no big deal. I have everything in front of me. So Crobat is a Stage 2 Darkness Pokemon. It's 110 HP, which is on the lighter end for Stage 2s, but it has a key ability called Cunning Link. Cunning Link says, once during your turn, if you have Arceus EX in play, again, all these links, you need to have the Arceus or Arceus EX to be impactful. You may do 30 damage to your opponent's active. It is a click on it, 30 damage to the active if you have an Arceus in play with you. And this doesn't have to be in the active for this ability to trigger. It just has to be on the bench.
So it's like a Darkrai. The Darkrai X, you move energy on it, you do 20.
Pretty much.
Like moving energy.
This Darkrai Crobat Arceus deck is stupid good. And then I've seen some archetypes put in a Druddigon just for more passive damage with a Rocky Helmet. And then also I've seen 1/1 Weavile because Weavile's just a low to ground attacker. So the Darkness archetype got better in my opinion with this set.
That does sound like a proper nasty deck to come against.
Oh, it is. Because it has a whole bunch of different weaknesses. Because Darkrai's weak to grass. Yep. Crobat's weak to fighting. Druddigon doesn't have a weakness. Arceus is in play. Yes, it's weak to fighting, but you can still do 130 with his attack, and you don't really have to do much. That archetype is seeing a lot of play. It's seeing less play than expected, but it's still really, really annoying to play against.
Yeah, I can imagine so. It's with the all the weaknesses there. It's really difficult. Like I said, really difficult to come against. You can't do much against the Crobat. You can have the Crobat and the Arceus at the bench and
Yes.
have something constantly active, and that can just bulk. Which is just there's so many ways to take on your opponent. There's so many little ways for your opponent to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. I was watching a video of another content creator where he was playing a deck, and he was playing a Snorlax based deck. So Snorlax is 150 HP, and he came up against this Darkness deck, and he's like, okay, well my opponent has this Arceus in the active that was fully powered up. It can't one shot the Snorlax naturally, and then he's like, oh, he's a Crobat. Oh, he has a Darkrai. He's like,
oh,
okay, my Snorlax is now dead. And normally the reason why you play a card like Snorlax is because it has to take 2 shots. And this deck overcame that so easily. He's like, okay, duly noted. And he conceded and just moved on. I was like, wow. Like he thought you were being, he was like, yeah, this deck's super bulky. I'm gonna be able to one shot most things. They can't one shot me. And then this Darkness deck was, yeah, not so fast, my friend.
We don't care for your bulk. Go away.
No, don't at all. They do not care. So I really love Crobat. I think it is the best Link card because it is passive damage. And for those who have watched the podcast over the last few weeks, I am big onto passive damage. I'm very big on the damage manipulation. So it not hitting for a lot of damage does not make it anything bad to me. It has very good partners in this game and very good partners in the current meta. So it can definitely get its value for sure.
I do feel at the moment, playing online, I have been. I always know I've not seen it. I've not seen it once. Normal online battles, I've never come against it. Dark Crobat plenty of times, but not the Crobat.
I think a lot of people are afraid of the stage 2 aspect of that card, but
yeah, it's a bit of a drawback, but you can get around it.
Yeah, it's you just put in bulky walls in front of it, and then you'll get it. Like Pokemon Pocket does not have the most efficient deck Pokemon search. It has Pokeball, it has Pokemon Communication, and then you just have to hard draw all the rest. So I get it, but I think this deck, this card, this archetype should be a lot higher than it is. It's probably around tier 2-ish at this point, but I would consider it much higher because of its ceiling is much better than its floor.
Yeah, I can see what you make out with it, and just hearing it now, it's kind of something I might build when I eventually pull the Crobat.
I just pulled my second, so I'm about to go build it. I love the Dark Archetype in Pocket. I have a very, very fun Weezing deck that we've profiled on podcast as well. So I really love the Darkness type in this game. I think with it having depending on which Dark card you're playing with, having multiple different types of weaknesses allows you to play around with that. Very similar how fighting have multiple weaknesses, so you get to play around with that depending on the meta you are kind of experiencing when you're doing those different events. So speaking of one of the weaknesses, the next card I want to talk about is Leafeon EX.
Oh, yes.
So I saw this card, and I was like, this is busted because it's grass.
I saw the ability, and I was like, I swear I've seen this somewhere before in this game.
And it's a little different, but it's exactly the same as some other energy acceleration pieces. So Leafeon EX is a stage 1 grass-type Pokemon that evolves from Eevee, which is a colorless. So you do have to play around with that in Pocket deck building. 140 HP is nothing to scoff at. No. It being a grass-type, obviously it's weak to fire, which fire can do 140 very easily before the weakness add-on. But the reason why I think Leafeon is so good is before I read his ability, let's talk about what grass has. It has Superior with Jungle Totem, which doubles energy into play. We have Celebi, which is for 2 energy, flip a coin for every energy it's attached to Celebi, do 50 damage. And then also has a Executor EX, which is a 1 energy, 40, flip a coin. If it's heads, do 40 more.
Yes.
So Grass already has a whole bunch of tools on top of its just natural bulk, the Erica, the potions. So adding Leafeon into the mix makes Grass, to me, a very high contender of close to Air A or Tier 1 and Tier 1 plus, where
Yeah.
Leafeon has this ability, Force Breath. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, take a grass energy from your energy zone and attach it to any one of your grass Pokemon. That's 2 energy a turn. Assuming you don't have Superior, which turns out 2 energy in the 4, you can power up your Executor out of nowhere. You can give more energy to your Celebes. You can or you can just accelerate yours to yourself, and Leafeon getting powered up in 2 turns instead of 3.
Which fires off the Solar Beam for 70.
Exactly, and 70 is a very good 3 energy damage in my opinion. I think it also having a 1 retreat cost means you can Force Breath to itself, retreat, use your attachment for turn to something else, and still be a very productive turn, even though you're only netting 1 energy instead of netting the 2 to 4, depending on your deck setup.
Yeah,
so
the 1 retreat cost gives you good flexibility.
Yeah, and on top of all that, we're not talking the fact that there's Leafs, the fact that there's X speeds. So I think Grass and Leafeon is super positioned to be a top meta contender, and we're seeing it in tournament results where Grass is maybe not taking a lot of the spots, but is taking enough of it for it to be noticed.
It's quite funny with Leafeon coming around when it did. We had Celebi Superior like dominate for a while, and we're like, okay, SmackDown's come out. The grass isn't that effective anymore. And here comes the like, oh, we're back in the party. We're going to throw energies everywhere. Get you ready for it.
Yeah, because SmackDown boosted Fire a lot.
Yes, it did. It did.
So again, the ebbs and flows of a meta, different things like that. So it's really interesting. I saw it and went, it was one of my chase cards, and I didn't pull one until like 2 days ago.
I hate it when you have a chase card that goes forever.
I was like, I'm still chasing Darkrai.
You haven't got what?
EX? I have not pulled a Darkrai EX. That's why I'm like, I can't play Dark because I don't have that. I don't have the Magneton for Darkrai bases decks. I was like, I have all these decks I want to play, but I can't.
Again, I only have the promo one. I've not pulled Darkrai EX myself.
So, but that again, it goes into the fact that you have to pull them to play them, which is honestly part of the fun of this game. I probably, and I know Vimmers is the same, only we do the drop events, we do the minimum you have to do for the online battling, and then it's back to collecting.
Yes.
So, alrighty. So the next card, since we've already talked about it, I'm just gonna bring it back up. Is that Pseudo Widow?
Yes.
So the Pseudo Widow is a basic fighting type Pokemon for 80 HP, and it has 1 attack, Fighting Headbutt. It's for a single fighting energy, so like we talked about, super low to the ground. And it's 20 plus. If your opponent's active Pokemon is a Pokemon EX, this does 50 more damage. Or 30 more damage for a total of 50.
Yeah.
So single energy for 50 on most leads in the meta. Very few leads are leading with non-EX Pokemon. Even if they're not leading with an EX, 20 for 1 energy on turn 1 is still really, really good. Yeah. And then as early as turn 2, it can get boosted by Lucario, so another 20 on top of that. And then if you give it a Rocky Helmet, you're putting 20 passive damage onto that. And it gives you a lot of really good early game pressure while you're setting up other attackers on your bench. I've seen the Sudowoodo in the Rampardos deck, and it is diabolical.
The Sudowoodo could realistically destroy Arceus players at times.
Yes, absolutely. Arceus, Weavile, it can hit on all the early dark Pokemon from the first set, because all the dark Pokemon in the first set were weak to fighting. They added the grass weakness in the second set with Darkrai and other traditional darkness Pokemon. So this card is, like I said, I think it's the most impactful because of who it hits into for weakness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially at EXs, because like I said, EXs lead a lot. A lot of people will go basic for Arceus straight away. If they pull that first and they've got to play that active card first, it's the Arceus. you're going second with Sudowoodo. It's off to the races.
Mm-hmm. And everyone's like, "Oh, it's weak to grass." I said, "Yeah, but all the grass type Pokemon before weakness are knocking it out anyway. Celebi needs 2 heads regardless of weakness. Yeah, Mega is going to knock it out anyway because it does a base of 120 damage before weakness. Um, yes, Leafeon can one-shot it with the weakness, but again, Leafeon needs 2 turns to set up. So I don't think the grass weakness is an issue because it just 80 HP is the perfect spot for it to be because then you're forcing attacks to be on the higher end anyway.
It's a fantastic basic to have in your arsenal. It really is.
Mm-hmm. And the last Pokemon I want to talk about for Triumphant Light before we get to the 2 trainer cards is Origin Form Palkia.
Ah, yes, I was looking at this.
It's sneaky good, but it's only good in the right setups. So, Origin Form Palkia is a basic water type with 120 HP that has 1 attack for 3 water energy called Zone Smash. It's 60, and then flip a coin. If it's heads, do another 60, so total 120. Yeah. So, obviously, this takes a while to set up. Yes. But water has enough tools where this can get set up in 2 turns.
Oh, absolutely.
And we'll talk about in depth about these tools in just a couple more minutes. But those tools are going to be Misty and Manaphy. So if you put this on your bench, you're going second. You Manaphy, so your turn 1 energy goes to Manaphy. You Manaphy Ocean Gift onto an energy on there. Turn 2 attached to the Origin Form Palkia. Manaphy turn 2 attack. All right, now you're powered up, and your opponent has to get through your Manaphy in order to get to your attacker. Yeah. Or you can be like the 1% of Pokemon Pocket players and flip more than 1 heads on a Misty.
Or you can just flip anything on a Misty. I've never got any energy out of Misty. Never.
Like I said, 1% of Pocket players get more than 1 heads on a Misty. I actually was playing with a Misty deck probably late last week, and I flipped 5 heads on it, and I'm like, I'm so glad I'm playing against the computer, or this would have been an automatic concession. I had someone flip 8 on me, and they were playing a Gyarados deck, and I'm like, concede. I'm like, no, you win. Like, I'm not even going to try to waste my time on this fight.
I feel bad when I do get the flips of my favorite. It's every coin. It's like, just the RNG of it. I know, but Misty flips. I literally gave up water decks because of Misty flips.
I know a lot of people that don't build Misty decks. They can still build water because there's a lot of low energy or low to the ground water decks that don't rely on Misty.
Until Manaphy come along.
Well. Yeah, the Manaphy is the reason why more people are still playing water. I want to say it was Pokemon Cast, PMNK Cast. They did a video calling Misty the worst card in Pocket, and I cannot agree more. Because you build your deck around it, and if you hit the 50-50 once, you're great. But it feels like a lot of players don't ever get the 50-50 they need.
It doesn't feel 50-50.
No, it doesn't. And since we're talking about energy acceleration, we'll finish up on the Misty conversation now then. Yeah. So Misty is a supporter card from Genetic Apex that says, pick one of your water Pokemon. So you have to pick the Pokemon before you know the results of the flip, which is part of the card. And to flip a heads, or flip until you get a tails. For every heads, attach a water energy to that Pokemon. So it has to be a water Pokemon. You have to declare the Pokemon before you actually do the results of the coin flip. And then you just flip until you get a tails. So, as we talked about, it's technically a 50-50 for 1 water energy. It doesn't ever feel like 50-50.
It feels 25-75. It's debilitating, especially if you only got 1 Misty card in your deck like I do. It's just frustrating when you think you've got it all set up. There's Arceus EX was my main target for water energies.
Yep.
Like, flip it, and now what?
It would be a much better card if Pocket had any attack that boosted its attack based on using a supporter during that turn, because it's still a supporter that's used even if it fails.
Yeah.
But Pocket doesn't have that attack. TCG has that attack in the past. It's if you use a supporter, this attack does 70 more damage. That would be
Okay.
great. But if you're using the supporter, you want to have impact on the supporter. Flipping the tails gives it automatically no impact, which is such a feel bad because it can completely derail the rest of your turn.
Yep.
I've seen people do the Misty last, assuming they're going to get the tails. And
okay,
then
that's an interesting approach.
everything else from its turn was sequenced around, okay, I did my attachment. I'm not relying on the Misty. If I get the Misty, great. The rest of my turns already is going to be bolstered. But if I get nothing, then I'm prepared for nothing. So it is that give and take.
Yeah. A pessimist is never disappointed.
Exactly. So back to Triumphant Light. Speaking of water Pokemon, let's talk about one of the two supporters in the deck that are in the set that I think has some form of impact. How far, that's still to be determined. But the first one is Irida.
Yes.
So Irida is a supporter that reads heal 40 damage from each of your Pokemon that has any water energy attached. That is game changing for water types.
It's huge. It's a massive card.
And we talked about a little bit about how grass has all that support engines of potions, Ericas, and that just they turn into walls. This is going to give water the capability of having a much stronger mid to late game. Misty is a very much an early game supporter for waters. Irida is very much a mid to late game. Because if you've already been set up and you just need to be able to turn a 2-shot to a 3-shot, that 40 is going to be the difference maker for you.
Yeah. And so, it's the way it reads for each of your Pokemon as well.
That has an energy attached to it, yes.
If you're moving everything here, there, and everywhere, and say you've got Vaporeon, where we get into that later, you can move water energies around. You can heal anywhere.
Yes.
It's very, very versatile.
No, and that's where I haven't seen it see much play yet.
No,
but I think when there's going to be just a little bit more to the expansion of the card pool, you're going to be able to see a card like this turn into a 1-of in some water decks that just need a little bit more bulk. Turning a 2-shot to a 3-shot or a 1-shot to a 2-shot means a lot in Pocket. Maybe more than it does in traditional TCG. Because of the limit of prizes.
Yeah, the way the format's very different.
And then the last card I want to talk about with this set is Adaman. So the other character in Pokemon Legends Arceus. So Adaman is a supporter that reads during your opponent's next turn, all of your steel Pokemon take 20 less damage from your opponent's Pokemon's attacks. So I wanted to emphasize the attack piece because we did talk about Crobat and Darkrai where it can just ping, ping, ping. This supporter does not negate that, but it does negate the damage from the attack. And it applies to your entire board. So the Blizzards from the Articuno, the damage from the Origin Form Palkia EX, those type of pings would be negated, except for obviously the big damage onto the active. But it is definitely a card that has metal written all over it. Metal is historically a card that is bulky defense, damage reduction, and we do see that a little bit in Pocket with the metals in there, the Bastiodons. So it has a lot of natural synergy with metal itself. I don't know if this is enough to make metal good outside of Dialga EX, but it definitely gives people an opportunity to play metal a little bit more.
Metal got the boost in Triumphant Light. I think a lot of people needed to see. But like Dev said, is it enough? Dialga EX is a great card, but I don't know if it's enough to truly run it. I've tried running metal. I can't get on with it that well. But then again, my deck was awful.
Metal is missing that. So Skarmory is fantastic. 1 energy, if it has a tool attached to it, it does more damage, or your opponent has a tool attached to it, it does more damage. One of the two.
Yep.
That's still really good early game pressure. The Dialga EX is really good, just general acceleration and pressure in itself. It just doesn't have a good middle to late game sweeper Pokemon that you need to partner with that Dialga. Yeah, and it's just one piece. It doesn't even have to be a basic. I would say if it's a good stage 1 metal, like a metal Magneton maybe, or
Yeah, there was a bit of Magneton in Triumphant Light, but
It doesn't do enough
nothing worth
damage.
noting.
That's the
Nothing worth
problem. It
noting.
doesn't do enough damage. I'm trying to think of what stage 1 metal types are in Pokemon just naturally off the top of my head. Probopass, but the Probopass EX doesn't do enough damage in my opinion.
No.
And it's too many energy. It's 4 energy and it just reduces damage. Again, metal reducing damage.
It's too expensive energy-wise a card to use.
Metal's always had that issue, regardless of Pocket or TCG. Metal's always been an expensive typing, but the payoffs have always been really, really good. Yeah. So that's why I'm like, it's super close to being a super playable card and a super playable archetype. It's just missing that one piece at this moment.
Maybe like a Clink or Clang or something in a Unova deck.
I want to say, like, Unova coming back, maybe we'll see some pieces, right? The second you said Clink Clang or Clink Clang, I'm like, oh, Unova set. Okay, cool. We're on the same page.
We're manifesting. We're manifesting.
Pokemon, listen to us. We have good ideas. So that's the general overview of Triumphant Light. Like I said, it's not a lot of impactful cards. There's only 75 total cards in this set, but I think generally those cards have some level of viability either presently or in the future. And like we did last week talking about cards from the Journey Together set, this set has been out for 2 weeks, so we've been able to kind of see their impact on the meta currently, but also get to see how people are interpreting those abilities, those attacks, and kind of see what we can do to adjust going forward.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
With that being said, let's just do a quick pivot over to the last part of our How to Train a Rogue deck series. And we've talked about Pokemon. We've talked about items. We've talked about trainers. We've talked about stadiums. We've talked about tool cards. The only last thing we have to talk about is the piece that I think ties your deck together no matter what game you're playing, which is energy. Yes. So, in the Pokemon TCG and in Pocket, we have one basic mechanic that is universal. You get to attach one energy a turn to any one of your Pokemon. Now, Pocket and the TCG do it a little differently. In the main TCG game, you have to have the energy card in your hand. In Pocket, they just give you an energy zone. You just automatically just do it. You don't have to worry about drawing into it. You don't have to worry about building a deck. It's always going to be there. Yeah. But as guaranteed, and it's honestly, it makes the game feel so different.
It does. It flows so much better, I believe.
100%. So we talked about, especially like of metal, super high energy costs. How do we get those 3 to 4 energy attacks done and not feel like we're behind 2 to 3 turns? How do we get awkward attack costs, as you guys have been seeing in the Rogue Deck of the Week series we've been doing, those awkward terror attacks? How do we get those efficiently into play so we're not just trying to always play catch-up? And that's where energy manipulation and acceleration come into play. I think pretty much every single top-level deck and high-efficiency decks have some form of energy acceleration and or manipulation at its disposal so it can function game in and game out. Very few decks operate on 0 to 1 energy cost for the entirety of the game. There are decks out there. I mentioned earlier Rampardos. All the attackers in Rampardos are 1 to 2 energy. That's the exception to the rule. So most decks, you need to be able to put other energy into play. You need to be able to cheat around the 1 energy per turn requirement. So
Vimmers of the essence.
Yes, absolutely. So Vimmers and I actually have a list of all of the energy manipulation acceleration cards in Pocket, and we're going to talk about its strengths and weaknesses on each one to see how it kind of fits within its archetype and how we can build decks around those type of cards to make sure that when you're building a deck, you know what its ability does and you know the pros and cons to that ability and to those cards. Now, these are not all Pokemon cards. There are supporters, but most of these are Pokemon because the Pokemon attacks and abilities are always the most efficient way of going about it because there's less RNG to it, except for when you play Pocket. And we're going to talk about one very shortly on why we say except for when you play Pocket.
Yes.
So we're going to go in more or less set order because I like structure. So the first card on my list is actually a card that I actually built my first deck in Pocket when I was getting into the game.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with this Lilligant Venusaur deck when I first started the game when it was the Genetic Apex meta,
Yeah.
where Lilligant is a stage 1 grass Pokemon of 100 HP that has an attack for 2 grass energy, leaf supply. So it does 50 damage, which is pretty good for a stage 1. But I think what's even better is its text to the attack. Take a grass energy from your energy zone and attach it to one of your bench grass Pokemon. I paired it with the Venusaur that wasn't the EX. It was the Mega Drain Venusaur. Because I couldn't, to this day, still have not pulled a Venusaur EX. So
Fair.
I got the promo Venusaur from the Venusaur drop event.
Yeah.
And built a deck around that. So my grass deck is a super bulky heal deck where there's been multiple games where I've legit ran out of a deck and still played 6 more turns afterwards.
Seriously?
Yes, because there's no deck out condition in Pocket. Found that out the hard way.
Yeah, I was my first experience when I got to that with I can't remember what deck I was running. I was like, well, I'm gonna run out of cards, but next draws, that's it. We're done.
Yeah.
That's it, game over. I'm like, wait, the game's still going. What's going on?
Help. No, I did that one day. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna win by deck out. So I did a turn just to stall. And my opponent went through, and I'm like, what? Okay, so deck out is not a win con in this game. So let me figure out the rest. And I ended up winning like 3 turns later, but I'm like, I did not prepare my turn knowing that. So I definitely lost the turn.
Where's my hand gone? I've used it all.
I've done that too. I've played like every card's in play, all the cards I can't earn. I had played 0 card hand for like 3 turns, and it's like, okay, there's nothing I can do other than just heal and attack. It was stupid. Again, I love this Logan Venusaur deck because I just stalled out so many people by doing more net damage than they did. But Lilligant is really good, or was, I would say it's all right now, but it was really good in the Genetic Apex grass meta.
Yeah.
Where it had a Venusaur Baby and Venusaur EX to power up. It also allowed you to power up your Executor EX really quickly. And it was one of those, all right, I'm going to attach the Lilligant, and now I'm going to booster this Executor EX, where I can just pivot next turn and just do a little bit more damage. Yeah. So, like I said, I think nowadays the Lilligant has been phased out, but it still was a really good grass accelerator. And I still think it is a good grass accelerator, even with some of the other grass energy manipulators in the current set.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you were chasing the Lilligant. I was after something a bit more fiery. The Moltres EX from Genetic Apex. Yes. I chased this thing for about 3 weeks after I downloaded, simply because of its 1 energy ability, which is a 3 coin flip for energy. For each head, you can put energy onto a 5-type Pokemon on your bench. It's still good now.
Yes, it is.
It's still so good now. I still crutch on it now.
And I liked the fact it's a fire type with a lightning weakness. So if you've run into a water deck, that water deck has to do 140 raw damage to that Moltres EX and doesn't get the boost of weakness. And that means that Moltres EX is doing the Inferno Dance probably on average 2 to 3 times before it dies.
Oh, yeah. I've set up multiple Charizards doing it.
Yeah, and I don't think giving up 2 prizes is a bad thing for this, because you're setting up your mid to late game so well where it doesn't matter. Because you're just using your 1 energy a turn to either keep your Charizard engine going or attaching it to whatever got drug up by a Cyrus or a Sabrina and just paying the retreat cost to attack again.
Yeah, and the retreat cost is 2. It's not too bad. But if you get lucky with your RNG, you get stay 2 heads each time on 2 attacks. You've got a 200 attack Charizard on your bench, ready to go.
Yeah, but
you go in and you are nuking anything in its path. Yes, you lose 2 energy on the attack, but you can kind of compensate for that.
Oh yeah, and just having the Moltres, if you flip 1 heads for every turn you need to just naturally evolve up that Charizard's going to be powered up for 1 attack without having to do a manual attachment to it.
Yeah.
And by that time, hopefully you're doing maybe one is a one heads, one's a two heads. Like you're
Yeah.
using the 50-50 mathematical formula to just getting a 180 HP stage 2 Pokemon that can do 200 damage set up. And all you have to do is knock out 2 Pokemon, really, because by then the rest of the board is kind of falling around it.
Yeah. And you know your opponent's going to use the X at some point, so you're going to get 2 prizes off that.
Exactly. And even if you can't do the 200 damage, Slash for 60 for 3 energy is a great fallback if you just need that one turn to power up.
Yeah.
So Charizard is just super good, and Moltres is the best partner out there for fire. And I think even to this day, Moltres is the best fire accelerator out there.
It's the best fire engine. Absolutely.
So I am going to talk about a card I think Vimmers would gush over. And it's one of his favorite Pokemon in general, and I am kind of glad that it actually has a role in the metagame, even though it didn't have a role up front.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the Magneton for Genetic Apex. So it is a Stage 1 electric Pokemon with the ability Volt Charge. Once your turn, you may take a lightning energy from the energy zone and attach it to this Pokemon. Which may not sound great when its attack is lightning, colorless, so lightning 3 colorless for 60 damage. But when you are pairing that with its new partner, new best friend, Darkrai, the Darkrai is chipping, this Magneton is just sitting on the bench, powering itself up while you are attaching and doing chip damage, putting pressure on with this EX attacker that by the time it even does its attack normally is, 90 damage plus 3 turns of chip, so it's pretty much knocking out whatever it sees in front of it beforehand. And then Magneton's just going to be a nice pivot option that, all right, 4 turns later, this thing's ready to go.
Yeah.
It is stupid good.
With the introduction of Dawn in later sets, you can then move that energy off your bench Magneton once you're active.
Exactly. Because that colorless attack cost is very prevalent in Pocket. So the Magneton just was like, all right, I'm just going to power up and I'm going to be just chilling. You ignore me. Because the only way to forcefully drag that Magneton into the active is somehow you put damage onto it and you can Cyrus it.
Yeah.
As long as you have a bench state of some form, they can't Sabrina it because Sabrina isn't a pick and choose Gust. Sabrina is, all right, just switch your active, but you get to pick what your new active is. So it was perfectly positioned in that space-time Smackdown meta. I think it still is with the Triumphant Light. I know Darkrai is seeing a little bit of lack of play, but I think that's more of a product of there's more toys to play with. Then Darkrai got worse.
Yeah, it's the case of it's the new shiny thing. We play with a new shiny thing.
Mm-hmm. So it's
literally shiny in Dialga's case.
I just honestly I didn't think Magneton was that good, and then I saw it. I go, oh my gosh, and I'm like, why didn't I think of that? I look at my collection. I'm like, oh, it's because I never pulled it. That's why. Okay, that makes sense. That's why I don't know why it existed because I never pulled it. So
that's the issue I have with Crobat. I've never pulled it, so I've not seen it.
So that's when I'm like, okay. Now I saw it in action like 2 or 3 times. I'm like, I want this deck, but I need it. I'm balancing the I want to play cards, but I also want to finish sets. And I don't want to go back to Genetic Apex just to pull Pikachu packs for right now because I have so many other cards I want to pull. So I'm in that kind of problem.
Yeah, once you complete the set, that's kind of done. I mean, I've never gone back to Mythic anything deck-wise. But with Magneton, it fits now into the old Pikachu EX deck if you want to run that. Like I say, with the Dawn, you can move the lightnings around. It's still viable. That Pikachu EX deck still kind of works in places. It's not amazing, but it can still work.
I think it's just a little bit too slow for the way the meta has evolved. But if you have Electric deck, I think the reason why people used to play the Electrode because of free retreat, I think if you switch to Electrode for the Magneton and just let energy get onto the board and throw in a Dawn or two, that way if your first Pikachu gets knocked out, you can just power up another Pikachu out of nowhere. That is still a really good feel.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of powering a card out of nowhere, the next card I want to talk about was the Pokemon Energy Accelerator choice for probably the best deck out there for the longest time, which is Gardevoir. So Gardevoir was probably the king for Psychic decks for the longest time. So Gardevoir is a Stage 2, 110 HP Psychic Pokemon that has the ability Size Shadow. Once during your turn, you may take a Psychic Energy from your Energy Zone and attach it to one of your Psychic Pokemon in the active spot. And Gardevoir Mewtwo EX was broken.
It was. It was. It was horrible.
Because you would basically you can power up Mewtwo EX's second attack that does 150, but you have to discard 2 energy. Turn 3 sometimes. So you're poking with the size strike that did 50, and then you're just going in and sweeping.
Yeah.
And Gardevoir just powered it up. When Mew EX got introduced in Mythical Island, you just threw 1 extra Mew EX in there. Like, all right, now I'm going to copy into your Pokemon's your active Pokemon's attack. Cool. And it's just one of those situations where Gardevoir was able to power up Pokemon out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And you just thought, oh, my opponent is set back? Nah. And they were playing 2-2-2 line, so they were having 2 Gardevoir in play. You're like, okay, they can power up anything.
Yeah. It's terrifying to face. I was very confident once setting up a Charizard. Didn't realise at that time about the Gardevoir and the Mew EX set. Out comes Mew EX, powered up by the Gardevoir, and I get 200 damage my way instead of the others. And I'm sat there like, where on earth did that come?
Yes.
How did I lose this fight? Damn, that Gardevoir was good. It was so good.
It still is good. I think Psychic has just seen a fall off because it hasn't kept up with the small little bit of power creep that these new sets have brought in.
Yeah.
I think Psychic just doesn't have a new attacker to really get into the metagame. Yes, Mew EX is great, but right now the main attackers in like the decks that we're seeing, Mew EX can't really take advantage of.
Yeah.
3 energy for 30 damage does not feel great. 3 energy for 120 discarded energy does not feel great. So like when you're copying, you're not copying anything of note right now.
No. And with what's coming to the future set, like it, I mean, you've got Late Trio, guarantee that they're not really amazing cards that you want to use with a God of War.
No.
Late Trio cards are extremely sick.
Yeah, and it's they look great when you can figure out how to put the combinations together. Just like in the old in the main TCG, there was a Hitmon deck that you just kind of cycle through the different Hitmons. Yeah. But in here, it's like, oh, you need Azelf for Uxie for Mesprit for Azelf. It's like this just doesn't feel right.
No.
And you don't want to put a stage 2 just to power up 3 basic Pokemon that have synergy with each other, and the synergy's not really that good.
No, it's not. And speaking of not good, not every energy acceleration card in Genetic Picks was good. Some were very extremely situational.
Mm-hmm.
Some went in Pokemon like supporters like Brock.
Yes.
Which puts energy onto a Golem or an Onix only, which is a little bit unexpected. But
you had to do that, didn't you? I love it.
But the Onix is rubbish. I don't like the Golem either. It is a rubbish card. Like I said, energy acceleration is fantastic. In Pocket, it can be, and early days was situational at times.
Mm-hmm.
This was one of them, and it just didn't work for me.
I think the Brock card got a little better with the Golem from Mythical Island.
Oh, yeah.
It could just reduce damage, and that Golem was a better Golem than the original Golem. But but that's exactly what you said. Like, do you want to use your supporter for turn to put on a fighting energy onto an Onix that needs 3 to 4 energy anyway to do subpar damage? Or
it was only 70 for Land Crash, I think it was.
Yeah, it wasn't even that good. Yeah, it got a promo, which is fantastic, but it wasn't still not that good. Or do you want to wait for a stage 2 so you can have this Brock sitting in your hand for 2 to 3 turns, and as you're getting that Geodude to Graveler to Golem, you're still having to commit energy to it because the Brock's not going to get it out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Because it's such a heavy attack cost. So the Brock helped, but it isn't game changing by any means. And it's disappointing because the Brock card in the main TCG has always been hit or miss as well. We're getting a good Brock's card with Journeys Together, which is fantastic to see. But in Pocket, really all of these Kanto gym leaders that got cards were very situational. Like Lieutenant Surge was Raichu's, and
Yeah.
that doesn't feel good because Raichu wasn't that good. I don't think there is really a good Raichu, even including the new Link Raichu.
No, New Link Raichu's not great.
Like Blaine was great because it just buffed damage for fire that got it over a plateau, but it wasn't energy acceleration, so it was the damage modifier, which is good in its own rights. Yeah. So it's just one of those situations where, yes, this is energy acceleration. Yes, it's seen play. Yes, it's seen play in successful decks, but it has such a high floor that its ceiling is way too low.
Yeah.
You feel like you're very much stuck in a situation that has to work.
Yeah.
And then we already talked about Misty. I'm not going to go back to that one. We talked about how it can be game changing, but it just doesn't feel right sometimes.
Moltres' Inferno Dance makes me think Misty flips a rigged.
I think the reason why a lot of people feel that way is because you're guaranteed 3 flips of Moltres.
Yeah, fair.
Like you're guaranteed your flips of Moltres, where Misty, you just have to keep on going until you get a Tails. And if you lose the first 50-50, then you never get the other opportunities. Like, don't get me wrong, I've flipped 6 straight Tails with Moltres before.
I've done
feels
5
awful.
or 6. Well, it's awful.
But it just feels better because it's an attack. It's not your supporter for the turn. And it's better than just clicking pass, because you at least get a chance of getting something.
Yeah.
So with that being said, that is all of the high tier energy acceleration that I've found in Genetic Apex. Yes, there's the Meltan that was the Amass attack, but that's, again, said, very situational for that deck, where you are hoping that your Meltan does not get knocked out in turn 2 or turn 3 for you to get a Melmetal that can do 120 and reduce damage.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that can take it for 50 HP.
Oh, very easily.
Very easily. 1 energy. Yeah,
that's why I wanted to give it a quick passing, but I didn't want to say this was game changing. Now, in terms of energy manipulation, to me, Grass became the top archetype because of this card during this meta.
Oh, yes.
And it was superior. Everyone gave Celebi the attention, but Celebi only was good because of Superior's presence.
Yeah.
So Superior is a stage 2 grass type of Pokemon with 110 HP. It has an attack for 4 energy, 70 HP or 70 damage Solar Beam, but you're never really attacking with it. But it doesn't sound as daunting when you take into effect its ability, Jungle Totem. Each grass energy attached to your grass Pokemon provides 2 grass energy instead of 1. But this effect does not stack. So that 4 energy is really just 2 energy because it manipulates itself on top of manipulating its grass partners. And that's where we talked about Leafeon EX putting itself in with Superior, with a Celebi EX. Like that general combination of grass types can not flood your board with grass energy, but it will feel like you flooded because everything just got doubled. Like in Magic the Gathering, damage doubling or mana doubling is broken in Magic because it just gives you twice as many resources earlier than you should. In Pokemon, energy doubling is stupid good. And not enough Pokemon honestly have it, not enough types have
it. Yeah, I've run it. I think everyone who's played Pocket at some point has run the Superior Celebi deck. Everyone chased Superior when they saw it. Celebi was a harder pull.
Yeah.
But the thing with Celebi is its attack. Flip a coin for every energy. 50 on the attack. I've been hit for 12 flips, 13 flips, 16 flips. It goes hard. There are some stupid numbers that Celebi can pull off with the Jungle Totem ability from the Superior.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still played today.
Yes. I think I saw a tournament from the weekend prior to us recording where Celebi Leafeon. Yeah. I can only imagine that there was probably a Superior in there, but Leafeon Celebi without the Superior was still energy acceleration enough to make Celebi still good to this day. And I think with that piece, Grass has enough tools where it can do really whatever it wants. It could be a high energy output attack with Celebi. It could be a bulky attack of Lilligant and Venusaur, or you can just combine it together and just have all of the energy shenanigans that grass has. So it's Superior was really good. You never really saw it as an attacker, but it is the quintessential support Pokemon. So that was always really, really good.
It's going to sit on your bench, but it's going to do a lot for you. A hell of a lot for you.
Alrighty. So with that, like we said, Mythical Island really didn't have much in terms of energy manipulation or acceleration. Next is actually Space Time Smackdown, which is the A2 set, so the second big set that came. And to me, there was only one, but Vimmers found one and he read it to me. I go,
yeah,
oh, that's good. And a typing that is good on top of itself.
And it really supports its second stage. I'm talking about the Electabuzz.
Yeah.
From SmackDown Showdown, which from one energy doesn't attack. It sticks on other energy. So it's like Meltan from Genetic, but more HP to work with. It's bulkier, and it powers up the Electivire that comes afterwards, which does, I think it's 40 plus another 40 if it has 2 more energy on it.
Yeah, it does base 40, and there's 4 total electric energy on it because it is the double electric cost.
Yeah.
But that is doesn't feel bad because if you charge turn 1, evolve turn 2, by turn 2 is done, you have 3 energy on it. You're already poking your opponent for 40. And then the next turn is, all right, I'm going to be doing my max capability of energy. I'll be fine. And it's, like I said, stage 1 that can do that is actually a very good feel for Electric, especially because Electric's positioning within the meta.
Yeah, the beauty of the X-Buzz is it is based. There's no Elekid in the set yet.
Yes, there's no beat.
you can Pokeball it if you need to. It works well, and we've sent before with another card that comes into set, Dawn. You can move the electricity around.
Well, you'd have to retreat that in order to promote it, but
you have to retreat to promote it. But you can work with it. It's just going to be a good card. To be fair, I found it about 30 minutes before we went live.
And you told me that. I go, that's not that good of a card. I read it. I'm like, wait, hold on. Let me read the Electivire. Oh, yeah. Actually, yeah. And then I will partner it up with the supporter Volkner. Yes. Choose one of your Electivire or Luxray. Attach 2 lightning energy from your discard pile to that Pokemon. So, if you have a lightning deck, say you pull this card, or say you promote your Electivire mid to late game, and you've already had an attacker get knocked out, you can use Volkner to put energy onto that Electivire to do its max damage.
Yep.
So you are able to kind of piece together different ways of accelerating that lightning energy and even recurring some of that lightning energy onto your board to where you just power it up out of nowhere. Even say there's no energy on that Electivire, you can Volkner onto it and be like, all right, at least I'm doing my minimum damage.
Yeah.
And then you're one turn away, really, from making it the max damage because you have the attack for the turn and the attach for the turn after. So it's like, whoa, out of nowhere, I go from minimum to maximum with very minimal effort.
Yeah.
So that is not a bad feel by any means.
It's a good little find. You're not going to see it. You're not going to see it too much on, but it's a good little thing to have in your deck if you are an electric deck from the Space Time Smackdown set with Volkner. You can play around with it. You can catch people unawares.
Yeah, especially because lightning hits so many of the water decks for weakness. And it hits Yanmega and some of the other kind of decks for weakness. And I say Yanmega is a colorless attacker that kind of fits itself into a whole bunch of other archetypes. And we're going to talk about that last because it's my favorite deck. Mm-hmm. But being electric is super well positioned because of who you attack into for weakness. And weakness is such an underrated mechanic. Yes, in this game, it's only a plus 20. It isn't a multiplication of 2. But that plus 20 is the difference between KO and living. Especially in a meta that has almost no damage modifiers right now.
Yeah, that Electabuzz can give a Moltres setup a bit of a headache.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, second last Pokemon I'm going to talk about. We've already kind of talked about this card a little bit. I'm going to want to go do a quick deep dive into it. Is Manaphy. So, Manaphy is a basic water Pokemon for 50 HP, which sounds awful. And before we recorded, Vimmers and I were talking. He's like, "How do you really feel about this card?" And I told him before I even talk about the attack, I said, "This card is a great lead. It is a card that I do not mind sacrificing. It's a card that I don't mind giving up a prize point for because its attack is so good, I don't care what its HP is." So the attack is for 1 water energy, Oceanic Gift. Choose 2 of your bench Pokemon, any type of Pokemon, they just have to be on your bench. For each of those Pokemon, take a water energy from your energy zone, attach it to that Pokemon. 1 energy turns into 3 energy really quickly. And to me, that's amazing. It's worth the 1 prize, even if you don't get to do it a second time.
It needs to be in your hand first. You can't really put it in any other situation. It needs to be in your hand straight away. But it's easy to get around early game as well. Pokeballs, if you do get the chance to.
Mm-hmm. I've done it where you Pokeball into your hand, put it onto the bench, X-speed it out, attach, boom, now your board is set.
That's a good way of doing it. I'm not for that.
Like, I don't mind not leading with it because you're leading with another one that hopefully has a lower retreat cost. So you can just turn it into a free retreat in some way, shape, or form and just get it into there. And then you're accelerating because then now you have at least 1 bench, if not 2. Yeah. And you're just accelerating up your bench that way. You're like, okay, not the best lead, but it's doable. And then on top of maybe playing the Shaman from Triumphant Light, where you can reduce the retreat cost of basic Pokemon.
Yes, by 1, yeah.
So if it's a heavier retreat cost, X speed, Shaman, boom, okay, cool. You're still getting the Manaphy up into the active spot. You have at that point at least 2 bench Pokemon, so you're going to get the maximum value out of Oceanic Gift, and you can just get your momentum going. And if your opponent can't take care of a 50 HP in 1 turn, that Oceanic Gift's going to turn 1 energy to 3 energy, 3 energy to 6 energy.
Yep.
And you're just going to sit there and like, okay, I will not do any damage to you, but you better be careful what's on this bench.
Yeah, because your bench is, for example, Origin Form, Palkia, Palkia EX, Arceus, any other cards that have been released in SmackDown or Triumphant Light, like from Colorless or Water, you're in trouble.
Exactly.
You're in a lot of trouble.
Exactly, which is why Manaphy, like you asked me, goes, "Are you sure Manaphy's that good?" I'm like, I really do believe it is. I think it is a very good card.
Every time I've used it, I've struggled to get on with it. But that is part of the reason why I have a bit of stigma with Waters. This is a guaranteed Misty Flip.
Yes.
Which is what we wanted.
Yes.
Since Misty Flips were a thing. So, yes, it might make me run Water again. I need to build a new Water deck. Manaphy will be an inch bigger.
And with Water getting some Ice-type Water coverage, you can play Water decks that aren't going to be universally weak to Lightning. You can have that Lightning and that Steel-type weakness, where depending on what your matchup you're going against, you can just fill your board with a different type of attacker. And the reason why I say that's important is because of the last card I want to talk about, which to me is my favorite card from Space Time SmackDown. And I love running this card, and my favorite deck right now is Dialga EX, Yamega EX. I've just fallen in love with it. I will admit I did not build it from scratch. I found a list, and I went, ooh, this is interesting. I've played it, and I just love it. And Dialga is such a great energy accelerator on top of putting pressure on your opponent at the same time with having natural bulk.
It is so good. It is so good. The moment I saw that Metallic Turbo move, I was like, okay, 30 damage onto my opponent. Awesome. 2 energy to my bench. Yes, please. Give me that.
And everyone was giving it so much like, oh, this is not a good card. Like, you have to do 2 turns to accelerate it. I go, 150 is a lot of HP to take out.
Yep.
At turn 2, you're doing 30 damage and you're putting 2 more energy onto your board.
Yep.
I don't care if I give up 2 prizes. If that gives me my sweeper set up, I'm okay with giving 2 prizes. That means I'm taking 3.
Yeah.
Or
if you have Adam in your hand.
Even better nowadays. Giant Cape gives it to 170 HP. It's
Rocky Helmet.
Rocky Helmet gives it 20 passive damage. There's so many different ways to play the Dialga, and everyone's like, oh, it's going to get knocked out. You tell me how you're going to knock out 150 HP in 2 turns. Consistently, early game.
It's not going to happen. It's not. Maybe the Sudowoodo can do enough damage to make you question how many people are out there, but how many people run the Sudowoodo?
Well, even with the Pseudo Widow, say they go first. I go first, and so they go second, right? They have the
Yeah.
energy turn ahead of me. They're doing 50. I attach. They're doing 50. I attach. I do 30 damage into them, so now they have 30 HP on or 50 HP on their Pseudo Widow, assuming no tool modifiers. I'm
Mm-hmm.
putting 2 energy onto my board. They hit into my Dialga. Okay, cool. I give up 2 prizes. Now I promote my backup attacker. I'm hitting into that Pseudo Widow, and I have a clean attacker set up. I hope that you were setting up your bench while you were poking at me.
Yeah.
And fighting can do that, but fighting also deals with the problem of right now the most popular fighting deck is Rampardos, which is a stage 2 that comes from a item card. So you can't Pokeball the fossil.
Mm.
And then you are just powering up Riolu's, which is great, except for your Lucario damage isn't being something I'm worried about late game because you're knocking out anyway. So your Lucario damage is just icing on the cake. It isn't the difference in your math. So that's where I love Dialga. I think it fits very well into the meta. This deck, yeah, Dialga and Mega is a deck that you're going to see for a very long time. I think that as a energy accelerator, energy manipulator, just a board manipulator is just so good. I didn't want to make that the deck of the week because it is very high level meta. So I definitely wanted to talk about a deck that Vimmers and I built for the deck of the week from there. And we wanted to focus on a energy accelerator of some form. And
Yes.
he definitely was like, look, this is my chase card. I love it. And when we were diving into our respective collections, but mostly his, because I'm like, hey, Vimmers, you're coming in, you're helping me out. Pick a deck you love. He goes, Moltres EX. Didn't even stutter. He goes, Moltres EX.
Yeah,
okay,
straight on it.
Let's do it. And then we built the deck together, and he showed me like this is what I've been running. I'm like, at the time it was a genetic Apex deck, so we sat down and we're like, okay, let's add Triumphant Light to it, and we started looking through the card pool. I'm like, I know you have the 3 Arceuses. We're gonna put at least one of them. He goes, okay, cool. And then we're like,
yes.
have you thought of Heatran? And he read it. He goes, this is dumb. I'm like, yeah, it's really good, isn't it? He goes, okay, this is going into the deck. So, Vimmers, why don't you talk about the deck list a little more than obviously I kind of broad stroked it very much, but let's talk about that Moltres EX deck that we were putting together.
So the Moltres EX deck, when we first put it together, was completely genetic Apex. It has been the whole time. It's been deck of run the whole time, but now thanks to Triumphant Light's additions, we can make it so much more powerful with the Heatran, which is a base level Pokemon, like we discussed earlier, 110. You can put it in there, in your active, it will take some hits, it'll power up. But if you start with the Moltres EX in your hands, put that in your active, 1 energy on it, you start energizing everything on your bench, except the Arceus. Because Moltres' drawback is only does fire type Pokemon for energies.
Now, I still don't think Arceus not getting powered up by Moltres is a bad thing in this deck.
It's not a bad thing, no, but Moltres just can't power anything, which is not a massive drawback. The Moltres is going to do the bulky work. You're going to have it out there. If it gets KO'd, you take 2 points, but by the time it does get KO'd and your opponent's got enough setup to take out something like Moltres, you're going to be set up on your bench anyway. You've got your 2 Charizard EXs in there. Of course, you got the Charmander and Charmeleon in there. That's what you're powering up specifically. If you can't do that, you've got the Heatran to back you up as well, which you can sub in. If that thing takes a hit, you're going to be doing more damage. You're going to be 8 damage instead of 4. We can put a giant cape on that, boost its HP. Whilst we've got the Heatran out there if we need to, or the Moltres out there if we need to, we've got 2 Pokeballs, we've got 2 potions. We can keep the bulk onto the Moltres, keep powering the potions whilst we're searching for other things with the Pokeballs, getting those Charmanders out there if we've been unlucky in our opening hands. We've got Pokemon communication as well to also help us get the Charmanders out there. We've got 2 Professors Researchers to keep drawing hands. We've got a Dawn to move bench Pokemon's energy to active. So if we do have a Charizard in it needs a bit of backup energy-wise, we can move that energy across no problem. If we don't like what we see from the opponent, we've chucked a Sabrina in there as well. Say, get rid of that. We don't want to see that. Bring something else out here we can have a go at.
Yeah.
It's a really, really fun, good deck. You can get energy really quick with the Moltres. I love Moltres EX. I'm not hiding it at all. It's really fun to do. Dev, what do you think of this deck with the improvements we made from what it was? Because it had Heat more in it before. It didn't have anything else really apart from the Charmander, the Charizard line in it. The improvements we made, what do you think of it now?
So I did about 5 matches before recording to kind of see how it felt, and I didn't know what Moltres did because I just got my first Moltres, so like I was playing it. I'm like, why can't I accelerate an Arceus? I reread it. I'm like, oh crap. Well, okay, not the big deal. Let me just put all this energy onto the way I play this deck is I want to lead a Moltres. I want to put a Charmander in play as quick as possible. I want to put a Heatran in as my secondary priority, and then the Arceus just shows up when I can. And out of probably 4 out of the 5 matches, I was able to power up Charizard pretty efficiently. And the time I couldn't was because of bad flips. So I
Which
didn't feel
used to
bad
happen.
because that's again, it happens when it comes to coin flips. You kind of have to take the RNG every once in a while. It feels really good. I think it's very well positioned because it hits into Dialga for weakness. It hits into the grass archetypes for weakness. The Moltres covers the water weakness pretty well. The Charizard having a water weakness is irrelevant because you're doing so much damage, it doesn't
Yeah.
care what's in front of it. And if you get into a position where your Charizard is about to die or Heatran's about to die, but you have a full bench and you have that Arceus, you can slowly just power up that Arceus behind it. And then you can pivot out of either one of those to an Arceus and clean up for 130 with the Arceus. So it kind of checks itself in a whole bunch of different ways. And it has a lot of weakness coverage, so it's able to kind of just sit in between any real matchup with no real issues. So that's what I really do like about it. I will be honest, it isn't a 1 or 1+ level kind of deck. It's definitely solidly in the tier 2, like the B tier range, which means you have a chance in any match you play. It's just you're just not going to walk into a Pokemon Pocket tournament and get good and just win every game. There is a little bit of feeling with the deck. There is a little bit of RNG to it. Like if you just have bad Moltres flips, the rest of your setup is irrelevant because now you're behind on your energy strategy. But with that being said, I think Moltres is the absolute epitome of Pokemon Pocket energy acceleration right now, where if it's not situational, it's RNG reliant, and if you flip really well, 1, 2 to 3 flip attack, and you're well set.
Yeah.
1-0 head flip attack, you're super far behind. So that is the drawback and the negative I would say for this deck. But overall, I love it. The Heatmore was something I loved during Genetic Apex, and I think it was a perfect Genetic Apex pivot. But when we got the Heatran, it was an easy replace because I think Heatran is Heatmore but better.
Yeah, and with the Arceus there, you can move the Heatran out of active, no cost at all.
Exactly. So you don't have to use your X speeds. You don't have to burn, for lack of better terms, burn your energy off the Heatran. Especially because it's such a bulky retreater anyway. So if your Heatran's inactive, you're attacking until it either dies or you have the Arceus in play. There is no wasting resources on trying to pivot it. So
the beauty of the Moltres is, and you've got to be insane lucky for it, you can put 4 energy on your team in one go.
Yes.
That's incredible because Charizard 4 energy is 200 attack. If you do get unlucky with your coin flips or you don't feel to go the right way, you can start moving the fire energy to your Arceus the bench and still try the coin flips. You're still getting the Arceus ready as a backup plan in case the coin flips just aren't falling for you.
Your floor for this deck per turn is 2 energies. You're assuming 1 flip out of 3 every single time minimum. If you hit the 3 to 4 once or twice, you're in the plus category. You're ahead of your average strategy. You just assume, all right, Inferno Dance, I'm going to get 1 energy. Yeah. If you get 2 to 3, so that's a total of 3 to 4, you're well ahead of your turns, and you can put more pressure. I think this is not an aggro deck by any means. I think this is definitely a mid-range deck, and it really, really does dominate that mid-range. It can struggle early, it can struggle late, but it can definitely win mid-time. And that's where you want to be able to take advantage of it, because a lot of decks in Pocket right now are trying to capitalize that mid-game, and this deck definitely has said, I have this.
Yeah, it's more mid game. You can't one hit kill. Um, like you can't get early game KOs. You can't
No.
get early game wins too often unless you're really, really lucky going.
Yeah,
It
I
doesn't
mean,
happen.
even with the case that the Charmeleon doesn't do enough damage or really put too much pressure, so you rather Charmeleon
Yeah.
sit on the bench for a turn anyway.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes what I do with the Moltres as well is I actually put my attachments onto the Moltres. So the first 2 turns I'm doing the Inferno Dance, and the turn 3 I'm doing Heat Blast for 70.
Yeah. Moltres has got a 2 retreat cost as well.
So I'm just powering it
Players
up. I'm
have
like,
to put snag.
I'm giving myself options of, all right, I don't have to feel like I have to sacrifice it. I can always retreat it, keep that for maybe a recovery phase, and then go on from there.
Yeah. I mean, the deck quite fits me well because it does rely on coin flips. It's really good.
I mean, when we put it together, I go, this, like, when you gave me that skeleton, I go, it's just outdated. There's nothing bad about it. Let's add new cards. Like, that's the beauty of Pocket. It's nothing's going to just suddenly become bad. It's
No.
new set comes in, see what new toys you can put in there, and move on. It's just like in the main TCG. We have rotation coming up in about 2 weeks from time of recording. So the deck pool is going to change. You take your current deck, so you're like, all right, what's in the card pool? What can I add? What do I have to subtract first? What can I add? And see what the new identity of the deck is. Like, Moltres' identity was Moltres Charizard. Now it's Moltres Charizard, but has 2 really good friends in Arceus and Heatran. So you just reshifted the focus just a little bit. It still kept its central identity, but it just became more versatile with that set coming in. So it was quintessential, all right, let's reevaluate situation, and it didn't lose itself, which is always a good feeling, because sometimes when a deck has to re-identify, as we talked last week on the future of Gardevoir in the main TCG, there's going to be a re-identification process, and different decks handle that very differently with how new sets get added and removed from its current meta.
Yeah.
So with that being said, Vimmers, thank you so much for joining me today. I greatly appreciate it. I was actually looking forward to doing this for so long.
I have as well. I really have. I'm quite nervous, but
when Dean was like, "Yeah, I'm going on vacation," I go, "So what do you want me to do?" He's like, "Do you have anyone in mind?" I said, "Yeah, duh." He goes, I didn't even tell him. He goes, "It's Vimmers, isn't it?" I go, "Yeah, it's Vimmers." He goes, "Okay, that's fine. Go do what you need to do." But Vimmers, if you want,
Dean doesn't mind me keeping his seat warm.
I don't. I mean, I was a seat warmer for the longest time, so I get it. So we're both in the same boat. But Vimmers, if you want, please plug your channels, plug where they can reach you if they want to see your content, and if they just want to ask you general questions as a non TCG player. Because my brother and I, we have a TCG background, so we definitely look at games very differently than someone who's more of a Pocket background.
Yeah, I'm definitely much more Pocket. I do have some TCG. Do not play anymore. I play a little bit of Live back in black and white era. But yeah, I am more of a sim racer. I play a lot of Grand Tourismo. My YouTube is a Vim39 game. And over on the Twitch side of things, I'm also a massive Yakuza completionist. So we're going through all the Yakuza, Like a Dragon, and Judgment games on my Twitch channel at Vimmers39. If you want to ask me any questions about anything gaming, anime, anything, hit me up on Blue Sky at Vimmers39. And once again, Dev, Dean, thank you so much for having me on. Thank you so much for having this podcast. I've learned a lot about TCG for you guys, and long may it continue.
Absolutely. So all those socials will be in the show notes and the descriptions of all the videos. That way, if you want to reach out to him or even just want to watch his content, absolutely. He does stream 3 to 4 times a week on average. If you love watching streaming on Twitch side, that's what he does. And he does post an average of 3 to 4 YouTube videos from mostly Gran Turismo. So if you love watching racing games and just want to have that in the background as you're playing, opening your packs or even doing your battles, definitely give him a follow. He is one of my closest friends. He's, like I said, he's the reason why I do Pocket. I would have just be doing TCG stuff if it wasn't for him. And it's always great to talk to other people's perspectives, because I've been playing these type of games for so long. I forget my biases and I forget my preferences when it comes to deck building and different favorite things. So Vimmers has definitely helped keep me bounced when it comes to that stuff, so I greatly appreciate that as well. But for everyone else out there, thank you very much for following us. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Dean should be back next week if it travel anything doesn't go crazy. So you will see Dean back next week's episode, and we're going to be talking a little bit more of a different mini series. We just finished How to Train a Rogue, so we definitely talked about the deck building side. Now we're going to talk about kind of the execution side of it. So keep a lookout for that. Also, with that, one other housekeeping note before we leave for today is that we are going to be streaming soon. We're working on getting a Twitch channel set up for the channel that supplement our podcast and YouTube side, where Dean will be profiling decks with friends in terms of the journey together in post rotation and be doing in real life kind of matchups. So keep an eye on that. We're getting all that put together very shortly. Should be the end of March. Then we'll be doing some streams on the Twitch side. But with that, guys, thank you very much for your time today. We greatly appreciate it. Hopefully, you guys get to enjoy the TCG and the Pocket meta and the Pocket games just like we are. And like always, thank you so much and have fun playing those sneaky decks. Bye.